We're moving through this series, and I heard Jonathan Henderson was amazing as usual. I told him to be really common and mediocre. Was that true? Did he do it? I told him I didn't want to look bad when I came back. So I'm sure he did that. Yeah, good, beautiful. We've been moving through Reimagining the Gospel, and we understand the gospel message is so much bigger, so much deeper than we understood it before. The gospel message is that there is a kingdom reality here among us, right here, right now. We experience life here. Jesus came to bring that to us now. We experience that into eternity. This reality that he gives is not an escapist idea of how to avoid pain and brokenness. It's how to move through it with grace and dignity growing together. And so today I entitled this sermon, we're going to move through a couple concepts, so I just entitled it, Suit Coats, Floating Cities, and Losing Your Religion. So before we begin, let me pray with you. God, I thank you. I praise you for allowing us to be here together. Lord, please open our eyes to the reality of your presence here among us, right here, right now. Let that define who we are. In your name we pray, amen. When I got to Thailand, everyone tells you, wherever you go, they tell you there's some things that you have to do, right? Have you ever experienced that when you go someplace? Or if you go to a theme park, they're like, ride the Magnum. Why? It's like you're almost near death. I want to ride that. When I got there, they said, dude, you got to try durian. Durian. Luckily, I had a sinus infection. I couldn't smell the stuff. So for me, it tasted like a Christmas cookie mixed with onion. It was wonderful. Two favorite things in the world, onion and Christmas cookie. It was a beautiful blend. Didn't have to smell it. They also told me, while you're there, you can get suits for dirt cheap. And I thought, I don't wear suits. And then I thought, Pastor Dan's telling you to tell me this, isn't he? He's telling you I need a suit. And Dan looks great in a suit. I don't like wearing suits. This is not my thing. But then my wife pleasantly, kindly reminded me that most of my suits, they've shrunk in the wash. And they no longer fit me like they used to. And so it might be a good idea if I get a new one that is more formed to my new dad body. And so I went to this place right next to the hotel, and it was this wonderful place. They make really nice suits. I actually had him make this blazer for me. I said, give me a crazy-looking blazer. I want these things on it. And he said, I can do that. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I can do it, though. And so he started working with me on this new suit. And I had to go in for all these different fixes and all these things, and he had to size it quite just right. So I went in a lot, over and over again. And when I went in one time, we're waiting for the suit, and he says, sit down, my friend. He's about 27 years old. His name is David, the suit maker. He says, sit down. I want to talk to you. I said, okay. He said, you're one of those religious people, aren't you? And I thought, oh, great. Here we go. He said, a bunch of you have been coming by and buying suits. Thank you. I said, okay. I'll never have to work again. And he said, I love religions. I want to hear more about yours. He said, I see religion as people trying to attempt their best to explain the divine. And every religion I've encountered has something interesting about it. And so he's a Buddhist, and we sat down and we started sharing our ideas about God, about how he works in the world. And he asked me, tell me more about this Jesus. I said, okay. So I started sharing the message of Jesus and what that means for us today. And he said, oh, it sounds so good. How come in America you guys don't follow it? It was so fun to have this conversation with him. We kept talking, and he said, I'm the eldest son. And in my culture, we take care of our family as the eldest. And so he said, all the money I make goes to my family. He said, I have a scooter, and I have a very tiny little apartment that I share with people. But I send everything I have so that my family might survive and live and prosper. My brother, I'm going to put through college. He was so excited to talk about that. My sister, I want to put her through university as well. She'll be the first female to go. And I said, what about you? He said, I won't be going. Why? All my money goes to them. I said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm not. It is a blessing and an honor to be able to do this for my family. I said, aren't you going to miss things and stuff and like cars and a nice place? He goes, no, that's not what defines me. And I thought, whoa, hold on. This is what we've been talking about as a group. This is the gospel message. The gospel message redefines who we are. And I started thinking about Jesus and Paul and all the gospel writers, and they seem to talk about a redefining of who we are. Paul in Galatians, he says this. Paul says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free. There is no male or female, for you are all one in Christ. Because the gospel message, when it's lived out, it actually takes all of those lines of distinction and it throws them all out and it creates something new. Jesus oftentimes would say this. He'd say, relationships, the things that happen to us, the things we own, those do not define us. The tribe that you're in no longer define us. I want to talk about the things we own. In America, we have a lot of things that we own. I don't know whose phone this is, but it's going up. It's probably very important. Here you go. The things we own, like an iPhone. The things we own. I see no issue with owning things. Is it okay to own things? What do you think? My garage is a testament to owning things. I own a lot of things. The problem is, in America and many Western worlds, the problem is we don't know how to enjoy them. We own a lot of stuff, but we never fully enjoy them. Because here's the problem that we encounter, is when I get my new iPhone, it's really nice until I find out there's another one coming out. And that newer version has this and this and this, and all the bugs are fixed. And I'm not complete until I get what? The next iPhone. I'm not complete until I get the new version of this. And we do this in relationships, don't we? This relationship is good, but what about this person? And we'll move on and we'll do this and this and this. And we're always seeking to be fulfilled, always seeking to be satisfied. And we create something called the idol, in which we think that this thing is going to fully satisfy us, and we'll get to a place where we're static, we're perfect, everything is good. But here's the problem with that idea, is we weren't meant to live like that. The beauty about being human is that we continue to search for more and more fullness, because there's more fullness to be had. This sounds very deep. So let me show you an illustration. How many of you have seen this movie, WALL-E? Raise your hand. WALL-E. Cute little robot. I was talking to Mike about this on the trip, and I thought, I'm going to use this illustration. WALL-E. Here's how the story goes. This was actually voted the most spiritual movie of that year, because there's a lot of interesting spiritual connections to it. Here's what happens in WALL-E. In WALL-E, mankind has basically destroyed the earth. It's become uninhabitable. And it's gotten so bad that they create this thing called Axiom. And it's the spaceship. It's like a big cruise ship. And on the cruise ship, you basically have everything taken care of. All your needs are met. You get food whenever you want it. There's no pain, there's no brokenness, there's no conflict. It's kind of like how many of us talk about heaven. And on this Axiom, you don't have to walk. Isn't that nice? You just sit on your little hover thing and it takes you wherever you want to. And all of it seems really nice, but the audience begins to catch on to something. Because there's this really brilliant scene where it shows all of the pictures of all of the pilots from the past. They were only supposed to be there like 7 or 8 years. They sent robots down to fix up the place, but it's been over 700 years. And so in these pictures, you see as mankind de-evolves. They get fatter and fatter and fatter. And they get to the place where they no longer even know how to use the muscles in their legs. They can't even walk. They essentially become brainless people who just are seeking to be satisfied. But there's something brilliant that happens in this movie, is that there becomes a conflict. WALL-E steps in, and he's dirty, he's rustic, he's kind of doesn't fit in. But he causes them to have to look at their reality a little different. They begin to realize, we are not satisfied. We have only been under the impression we're satisfied, but the reality is we're not satisfied. We're actually very empty. And so at the end, they all go back to earth, which is still kind of a garbage heap, but they go back and they bring this one plant that survived, and they plant it knowing that the rest of the world will begin to grow and be restored once again. It's beautiful. It's a fabulous story. But the problem is, for many of us, we are like those people on Axiom. And we think that we need to find certain things that will bring us fulfillment and satisfaction. But the gospel is not about being satisfied. It's not about finding that one thing that all of a sudden now everything is good. It's very different. Mother Teresa, I think this is fascinating. She went to the Western world for a time, and she had this to say about the Western world. It's the poorest place I've ever been. Anyone find that ironic? It's the poorest place I've ever been. She was working with third world people in poverty-stricken areas. She says this. She says, it's a different kind of poverty, which is the more dangerous because it disguises itself as freedom and security and fulfillment. What if we in this Western world are actually poorer than the rest of the world and unhappier? Think about that. The gospel message, it doesn't revolve around being satisfied or obtaining something. It's actually about being free from the pursuit of finding something to satisfy. I want you to think about this. The gospel is not a formula in order to make you happy and fully satisfied. It's actually a message that helps us steer through all the pain and the brokenness, finding real life and promise and happiness. It's very different. At its most radical, Christianity, it says it's not a solution to the problem of being perfect, but a freedom from the attempts to find it. Watch what Jesus says in chapter 6 of Luke. Actually, I don't think I wrote it down. Perfect. Sermon on the Plain. This is what he says. When you experience what it means to be poor, that's when you are rich. When you fully experience what it means to mourn, only then can you be comforted. Right? It's almost like Jesus is saying, when you stop trying to find it, it's yours. When you stop trying to search for the thing that's going to fulfill you, you find fulfillment. No wonder we're so broken. Our culture today, we are constantly trying to find something to satisfy, and we're always being let down. The gospel tells us the things we own, the relationships we have, those don't define us anymore. Let me give you more. When you meet someone, they'll often ask you a couple things. What do you do? Who are you? Blah, blah, blah. But often you'll get to a place where you'll say, I'm a... What do you say? And it will eventually get to the place, if you're a good Seventh-day Adventist, you'll say what? I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And if you're worried, if they don't know you're a Christian or not, you'll say, Christian! You'll say that one a little bit louder. You might even say, and we're not this and we're not that. Let me make this very clear. I love our tribe. We're quirky. We're funny. We've got a lot of beautiful things to our tribe. But our tribe is not who I am. I am not defined by the tribe that I belong to. And Jesus is very specific with that. He says, you are not the tribe you belong to. You're defined by something different. Let me show you two really problematic stories in Matthew. Number one is this. Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came and was crying. Canaanite woman. Think about your enemy. Who do you hate the most? Who's it that you just despise? Hopefully you don't hate them. You've evolved. You're a good person. That's who this person is to the Jewish reader. Matthew is written to the Jews. And so when you hear the Canaanite woman, you're immediately thinking, that Iraqi terrorist, right? Whatever it is, that thing that you think those people are evil and you've labeled them. Whatever it is, that's who those people are, your enemy. And so, right here we see the Jewish person is saying, How dare her approach Jesus? And so she says to him, have mercy on me, O son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. But watch this. Jesus does not answer her a word. I've heard people try to explain this away. Well, he's just, he didn't hear her. Interesting, weird kind of interpretations to this. Jesus purposely in the story, he ignores her. Is that very nice of Jesus? That's not the loving, cuddly Jesus I grew up with on the felt board. Why does he ignore her? It gets even worse. But he did not answer her a word, and the disciples came and they begged him, saying, send her away, for she is crying out after us. And as a Jewish person reading this, they are taking the side with the disciples. They're saying, yes, you're right. This woman she doesn't deserve to be in your presence, Jesus. You came for us, the Jewish people. This woman, she does not belong. So he answers her, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I was sent for this tribe, not yours. But this woman, this annoying woman, badgering woman, says to him, Lord, help me. Lord, help me. And he answers, of course I will. I love you. You're my child, right? No, this is naughty, Jesus. Jesus says this, it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dog. Explain that away. God is love. He just called this poor woman a dog. Is that nice of Jesus? Understand from a Jewish perspective, though, they are nodding their heads. They're saying, yeah, got her. She deserves that. She's our enemy. She's a dog. But watch what happens next. She said, yes, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. And Jesus answers her, and this is a huge slap in the face to the reader, who is so high and pretentious and feeling really good about the story until now. O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. This would have frustrated a Jewish community who thinks they are the remnant, the only ones that understand gospel. The only ones who should experience salvation, healing now. Kingdom. The readers feel a huge slap in the face. Look at this next story. This next one I used to be so confused by. Then he said to his servants, by the way, context of this story, this man's having a big feast for his son who's just gotten married. It's a wedding ceremony. He invites everybody. We're told he invites first and foremost the honored guests, the people who are supposed to be there. For a Jewish reader, who is that? It's me. Of course it's you, right? It's me. And so we're told they don't show up. And this is what he says. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. You want to know why Jesus is murdered? He's saying a lot of things that would make that group very angry. You who think you are chosen, who think you are the only group that can obtain salvation, healing, kingdom now, you're not worthy. That'd be like me standing up in front of you and saying, Seventh-day Adventist Church, you are not worthy. You are not the remnant. And that was the last sermon Tony Werfel ever preached. It was a bloodbath. And it was for Jesus. He said, those people are not worthy. Go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find. And those servants went out into the roads and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. Everyone is invited. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. Keep moving. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there was a man who had no wedding garment. Uh-oh. Someone didn't get their suit from Thailand. One of these people don't fit in. You didn't wear a tie to church, son. You're not invited. I've actually heard it used this way. So ugly. That's not the point of this story. Remember, it's a Jewish audience. They feel like they're the ones invited and entitled. So watch what happens. It goes on, and he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and cast him out into the outer darkness." That's kind of mean. Imagine if we did that to people in church. It's not very nice, and sometimes we do. Let's not do that anymore. "Throw him into the darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." Here's the craziness about this verse, and I never understood it until a little while ago. When you went to a wedding or a feast or whatever, you were asked to wear a certain kind of clothing, and everyone else was wearing it. And so you gave up your Jewish garb, your Roman garb, your Canaanite garb. You gave up that, and you wore what everyone else was wearing. And so what happens here is that the man is thrown out of the party because he refuses to lay down his tribal identity and become one with the rest of the people there. "No, I'm so-and-so. I don't do that. I'm this and this and this." And we put up our tribal flags and we stop enjoying the party. And we are sent out from the celebration. What defines the guest is not their tribal alliances, but the fact that they're all invited to the kingdom. I have a couple questions I want you to think about. In your conversations, are you inviting people in or are you excluding them? Are you more concerned with keeping yourself separated from those you disagree with? Or are you finding ways in which to banquet together? Because Jesus is very clear. The gospel message binds us together. It creates a new way of defining who we are. Which is why there's this really terribly confusing quote. I've seen this quote over and over again. It's been misused by many. "Don't think that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I've not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to set man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those in his own household." I've heard people try to use this verse and say, "See, Jesus is violent. When we need to, we pick up our swords. When we need to." But I want you to consider something. In context, this is actually saying Jesus has come to break divisions. Watch. In a family unit during this time period, and even in ours today, where do you get your religious, political, economical, hierarchical ideas from? Your parents, the family unit. What Jesus is saying here is he comes to divide that line. And he creates something very different. That's what this verse is saying. And there's more verses I want to show you real quick before we close. "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a" what? Oh, I wish you could have heard yourself. "New creation." If anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. It's almost like you're experiencing it. Good. A new creation. "The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. All this from God, through whom Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." Now, because of Christ and this beautiful message, this is what it looks like. Watch this graph here. It's really profound. Now, there is no Jew, Gentile, slave, free, male or female. By the way, you can still be a male or female. I hope you understand that. That's good. Hold on to that identity, but know that that's not what defines you anymore. What defines you now is that you are a new creation. There's people who are not experiencing new creation, and there are people who are. That's what defines and separates us now. And we as Christians, we want to share the new creation with everyone we meet. What if I went to this meeting with the conference about what we do with evangelism? I made a stupid comment in the middle. I said, "I think we should have a funeral service. And we should bury all the 1940s tracks we're still using with terribly scary beasts." And I got a lot of angry looks. But we talked about evangelism, and I thought, evangelism. What Jesus wants us to do through evangelism is this: share our new creation stories. Sit down with the suit maker David and talk about your new creation experience. That's gospel. Then you don't have to come up with these crazy, weird ideas. You don't have to remember every single proof text that makes you, you, or your tribe, your tribe. You talk about how Jesus and his message has changed your life and what God is doing through you. That's evangelism. That's the kind of evangelism I can get behind. What about you? That's evangelism. And so moving along, Paul also says, this is what I mean. Brothers, the appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none. Those who mourn as though those were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing. I think there's more to that, isn't there? Yeah. And those who buy as though they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. This is not Paul talking about some geopolitical event that will happen someday when the world ends. That's not what Paul's talking about. Paul's saying this to a group of people who are divided. He's saying these divisions that we are experiencing, they will pass away someday. And we're experiencing it now when Jew and Gentile can become one. I'll tell you, 100 years ago, I would never have been able to sit next to a Buddhist person and talk about Jesus and have both of us have commonalities between us. And praise the Lord for that. The gospel message opens up beautiful doors. In Thailand, in Africa, everywhere we go, it opens up doors. The question is, will you participate in that kingdom? What's beautiful about this is that this kingdom reality, it opens up the doors and it offers us a new definition of what it means to be human. The gospel is not about escaping our human being, escaping being human. It's about learning how to be fully present and fully human right here, right now. My wife and I, we came back from Thailand, and our kids, they had these wooden swords. In the Werfel family, we don't buy dolls. We swashbuckle. And so we got these wooden swords for Kason and Ashlyn. I think they're more decorative than anything, but they broke. And so my wife, she took this Gorilla Glue. And Gorilla Glue, I think it comes from a different planet. Because it really does bind everything, but the problem is what you bind will never come apart. That one piece of the sword will never, ever come apart again. It's stuck there. The problem is my wife, as she was gluing this, she has no idea I was going to tell this story, but as she's gluing it, she's putting it all together and she goes, ah! She looks at me, she's like, my fingers are glued together. Sweetie, just pull them apart. I'm serious. She's like, I'm going to rip my skin off. Gorilla Glue. Be very careful when you use this stuff. She's got tissue paper. She's trying to get off. It's not coming off. And she hands me the tissue paper. She's like, Tony, look up, Google it, figure out how I get the stuff off. So I'm Googling it. It's water and soap. I guess that fixes everything. So she said, here, take this tissue. And she ran to the bathroom. She starts working on it. Me, I'm sitting there looking at Gorilla Glue because I'm so interested at what is it made of? My poor wife is like dying in the bathroom, like, ah! Like, oh, that's interesting. Sicolamalite. That sounds like an interesting ingredient. But then I grab the tissue and I'm like, I gotta blow my nose. I got glue on my eyelid. I'm like, I can't open my eye. I'm like, what's going on? And I start panicking. I'm looking like Quasimodo running around. Daniel, I got my eye. I'm freaking out. And the two of us are just dying laughing in the bathroom because I've got glue connecting my eyelids and she can't pull her hands apart and we're laughing. My wife and I, Our relationship is not defined because of the institution of marriage. What keeps my wife and I together are the experiences, the highs and the lows, the moments of brokenness, of panic, of beauty, of joy. Those are the things that bind us and define us. No pun intended, they keep us together. Those are the things that create commonalities and beauty. My friend Chris, terrified of elevators. He hates elevators because you get real close to people you don't know. You're smelling what they ate for breakfast. And he got real close one day and he thought, his biggest nightmare is someday to have the elevator, the cables cut and drop. That's why he won't go on Tower of Terror or anything like that. That's a nightmare. And so Chris one day, he's on the elevator. He lives in a big city. And he's on the elevator and it's getting packed. It says, 20 people. It feels to him like 40. They're all packed in together. And as he's going up, the lights start to blink. And Chris said he began to hyperventilate. And then the lights go out. And Chris, so funny, he says he starts breathing really heavy. They're like children in this elevator, and he's the one panicking. And he tells me his breathing got so heavy that he heard people kind of shifting because they were nervous. And he's like, we're going to die. And all of a sudden, he feels a hand grab his and squeeze tightly. And just 2 seconds later, another little pair of hands grabs his and squeeze tightly. And Chris said in that moment, in his panic, because he was sure he was going to die, he felt a sense of oneness with strangers in the room. And finally, his breathing calmed and the lights come on. And he said it almost made him cry, because when he opened his eyes, he saw many other people holding hands. We forget that we are one body. Our culture's created a lot of divisions, hasn't it? You're black, you're white, you're this, you're that. You're crazy glue, you're gorilla glue. You're a Democrat, you're Republican, you're this or that. But that's not who you are. And what the gospel message does is it says, you are a new creation. You've always been one. Don't let those other things divide you. The gospel message says you can be a new creation right here, right now. That's what defines you. And that gospel message brings us together around a table where we can share commonalities, share discussions, and we can do this openly in one heart, with one mind. My hope for you today is that you might begin to share your story of resurrection, your story of new creation with everyone you meet, understanding that they are all moving through the same journey you are. Share your story, your experience, and watch as those divisions break down and new friendships are formed. This is the new reality. It's called the gospel. It's called the kingdom of heaven, and it is to be experienced here and now. May we begin to see each other not as the other, but as another brother and another sister, experiencing this new reality all around us. That's my prayer for you today. May God bless you on the Sabbath day.